I hope you're hungry because somebody's making biscuits. Hello and welcome back to episode 4 of Night School Out of Character. It was 5 minutes ago. We've wrapped up.
For us.
Right. Time travel is a wonderful thing. So we mentioned in our last episode about table rules and how we have never had a set conversation of all of our tabletop game rules as a group. So we thought it would be really nice to have kind of a part 2 for the last conversation to finally lay it all out and have our table rules in one place. So we've kind of
they've built up over time. So it's never been like these are our rules. It's something would happen. We were like, we need a rule.
Yeah.
So
You're welcome.
Stop that.
So we've compiled a list of 10 gameplay rules for us, which, to be honest, kind of seems like a lot for like a kind of a casual game. But I think they all make sense, and they all make for us to have a really fun, well-oiled game. I don't know.
And I would say make sure that you understand that we're not talking about homebrew rules of like in a game, these are the mechanics of the game. These are rules clearly centered around before we start. It's almost a ritual of us to rethink what are the do's and don'ts of our game time together to make sure that we're being productive, efficient, having fun, but also not monopolizing the
Being
time.
respectful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And also, just a disclaimer, these are not rules that we are saying that any other group has to follow. This is just what works for us as a group so that we can stay friends. So, first rule, be on time. So.
Oh,
Michael,
15
you
minutes
cannot
early.
just do that.
15 minutes early.
So we had mentioned before that, or I had mentioned, I live on Vasquez time. So when we first started playing, it was it would either be housed at my house or at Kat's house. And if it was at my house, everything was ready, and I would spend so much time just like waiting at the table. Where are they?
At the door, looking through the peephole.
Yeah. I was so eager, and then when they would go over to Kat's house, I would always feel so bad because I would be outside of her house, like in front of her driveway, just waiting. And I wouldn't want to message and be like, hey, can I come in? I would just wait. And then finally she'd be like, we know you're out there. We hear your music. Just get inside the house. But it's because I wanted to make sure that I was there prepared and had everything ready to go so that if we said we're starting at 11, we're going to do a recap at 11. And it would be, well, everybody's here except for one person who decided to go get coffee or is running an errand or just woke up. And we're starting an hour and a half late.
Mm-hmm. And I think that just kind of goes to like be respectful. Like I feel like a lot of these rules just kind of go under the guise of just be respectful. So you're respecting everybody else's times. Mm-hmm. Yes, be on time. I think that one's very.
There is a difference between be on time and if you're giving your DM notice and your group notice and saying I won't be there until an hour after you'll start, because it is very easy for the DM to find a way to make that character, either if they have to travel with the group, if you're in a dungeon crawl and you're in the middle of day 2 of the dungeon crawl and that character is definitely there, they don't just disappear. You have to find a way to play that character and move them along where you're not making personal choices for them. But whenever they do show up, you want them to be there and be like, all right, you're in, go. It's very doable. It's also doable if you're not in a forced situation where they have to be there, for you to come up with a random reason for them to have to stay behind and exit them out of the story. But you have to have that communication. You can't just be the mysterious, non-show-up person and we're wondering what to do with your character.
Yeah.
Because I will kill them. No.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's happened once before.
Instant death.
Next one, rule number 2 is be ready for your turn. I see you. I know this is more for us. It just, I feel like we've learned this as we've played longer and longer, but it really, you have to be thinking about your turn way before your turn starts. If it gets to your turn in an encounter and you are finally opening up your app or looking at your sheet to see, well, what spells do I even have? That's not okay.
It's too late, yeah.
It's too late.
I know it's a lot easier with some characters than it is other characters because, you know, when you're a hammer, you're going to nail no matter the situation. But, you know, when you are a spellcaster and it's like, you know, well, I could do this in this situation, but then, oh, I have 3 other people going in front of me, which is a big thing why when I'm playing, like, I like to keep track of initiative myself because it's like, you don't want to be the jerk that throws a fireball at an enemy when all your other teammates decide to gather around them. So you might want to have another spell picked out as well.
Well, you have to be aware of what's going on, and you have to be ready at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you also have, it's beyond that. My general rule is after I make my turn as a player, I'm already planning my next turn.
Yeah.
And then as each person in combat is taking their spot on initiative and is making a decision, I am revamping my decision, but I am always ready with my plan so that once it's one person away from me, I pretty much know I'm doing this or this.
Mm-hmm.
And you've got a pretty good, like 90% chance of being able to do your action. There might be that one curveball that they do and you're like, well, now I need to take a moment to rethink.
Yeah.
And that's fine. But be prepared also stumbles into when you level up, you're going to be giving new feats, new traits, new attributes, or you might actually, if you're a spellcaster, have more spells and you have the ability to switch out spells. And there's so many times that our spellcasters in our parties wouldn't do that. And then they would get into situations and say, none of my spells work for any of this. And it's like, you had the power to make this change. You have the power.
Which actually goes, it's perfect. That's our next rule is be prepared, know your spells. Don't be reading and learning about your spells during an encounter. You should already know what your spells are way before you ever get into an encounter. You should know your character. And
I will say, Hovda, you have got to be one of the best spellcasters we've ever had in our group, because you know your spells and you're ready. But there's sometimes I don't know every spell and I have to look them up. If you get a new spell and I don't know you have it yet and you throw it, I can real quickly say, can you run me through what that spell is? And you are ready to tell me. You have never been like, hold up, let me scour through the books. No, you know what they are. And then I have time to come up with a judgment call.
Mm-hmm. And what I also love about Hovda, the way that you know your spells is you not only know what your spell does, you've kind of like come up with what you want it to look like and you act it out. And that makes me so happy. I love it so much. And then I reach out one hand and I'm like,
while charging my stones. Like,
yes, it's perfect.
And you think about it way ahead of time. Like, you think about a certain spell, what you may want to do with it. And this is from someone who knows nothing about that, but you think about it turns in advance. Like, you pick up stones and you maybe don't use them for like 4 more turns,
or until the next time we play, which I really like.
Well, I mean, I purposely, knowing we were filming this character, I purposely, did that. But it is also some of the former spellcasters we played with where it's like, I know for myself, starting as a level 1, you have like so many spells you have to learn. I'm just like, I can only imagine like, you're level 5 and you have 20 spells and you've read none of them. Yeah. That's like, yeah, you're not going to be prepared when it's your turn. So you're going to do the same thing every single time. The one you've read maybe, or just do something completely ridiculous. So yeah.
But the other beautiful thing about it, Hovda, and I don't give you nearly enough credit for this, but and I refuse to give it to you now. Is
moving on.
No, because in our previous episode, we were talking about this narrative storytelling and that it's a shared story. We're all helping out. When you do those moments of knowing your stuff so well that you can describe the actions, and this really doesn't go for just spells. This is feats, traits, anything. When you can describe it, it takes the pressure of me having to describe it and make it make sense in the story. And I love that whenever I can finally step back and say, okay, now really cinematically sell this and make this fight believable. And I noticed that once you started doing that, the rest of the players started doing it more, where they started really describing, here's how I jump off of this, here's how I flip over the table. And it makes a better storytelling.
Mm-hmm. It's more, you can visualize it a lot better in your head.
Well, I feel like I'm definitely taking it running with it because, you know, characters in the past where it's like, I take out an arrow, I shoot it. Like, I'm done. Like, you know, there's not much you can add to that.
Well,
it's debatable.
It is debatable.
That was rule number 3?
That was rule number 3, and rule number 4 is share the space. Like, and that, again, that goes perfectly into what you were saying. We're sharing the story. So it only makes sense that it's not one person telling the story all the time, GM included. It's also us having conversations and building relationships in the story and stuff like that. So. And
you know me, I love to talk as I jump in again. I'm like, shut up, this is my turn. I love communication and I love that storytelling aspect, but it is really, really important to open up space for other people to have moments to have story. There is nothing more disheartening for me than whenever I'm a PC in a character in a story and we have some downtime between objectives and missions, and the GM will say, all right, well, are y'all done for the day? Is there anything else you want to do? Okay, well, we'll move on to the next day. And I'm going, you just took out an entire moment where I've wanted to talk to so-and-so. I've really wanted to get this thing done to kind of build my character. And now I have no time for it. Okay, well, I guess I'll do it later. But that time never comes. So a GM can really kill it, but it can also be killed by a player if the players are constantly calling the shots and saying, well, this is what I'm going to do. And they want to detail everything about their day to the point of exhaustion where everybody else is like, I'm tired of waiting. I'd rather not do anything and just move on with the story.
Mm-hmm. Well, a GM can also really foster that. Like, I feel like you've done that really well in our story in terms of you give each character a moment to really like have a solo moment and delve into their character for a little more information for everybody.
Yeah, that's true.
Important.
Mm-hmm. And I kind of want to give, this goes a little bit into the next one, rule number 5, which is improvise. I want to say that in the how many campaigns that we've played? 3, that's it. But I feel like I've never had another character in game where I've felt comfortable like role playing and like actually having conversations with than you, Vick, because I feel like it's happened so many times already in this campaign where my character and your character end up together and having conversations and like a full-on real world house confessional where it's like, this is what's happening in my life and this is how I'm feeling. And I've never had that in another player, which has been awesome. And that's been super new for me. And I've really liked that. And I think it really goes along with your ability and willingness to improvise and just kind of go with it, which has been awesome.
Thanks.
And the car's just behind y'all eating peanut butter with his fingers.
I will say, though, in our current campaign, I have never enjoyed having conversations with any player as much as I enjoy playing Dakar's mom to Dakar. The conversations and because there's moments where it is very comical and it's a very like slapstick kind of relationship. But then there are really intimate, like loving moments where I'm like, I I get emotional just talking to you, and you do it so well that I don't feel like you're like making fun of the situation or hamming it up. You really play it so well. But it is those moments of you have to allow people to develop a character. You can't. We talked before in our first episode about like building or our second episode about building these characters and really delving into background and making them feel believable. But if you're not allowing them to live,
yeah,
and it's not just save this, fight this person, destroy this, that's not a believable life. There's other things that have to happen. So you have to give them those downtime moments. And there are times we play and there's no encounter because we've RP'd for 3 hours or more. And those are the best games because they're believable.
They are. And that's what makes these characters feel human, so to speak. They're not human, but
no, but it gives them a little
and that's
more
also
depth.
why investing in your character matters, because then it is, you know, a 3-hour role-playing session that you do roll a dice, but you feel like you accomplished something because you were being your character.
And once again, there are people, like I said, it's just our style of gameplay. So if you're getting here and you're going, no, I have to roll the dice. Trust me, we get it. The very first thing we do is we sit down and we all pull out our D20s and we're like, which one is it today? Because we like
who's the winner?
Who's the winner? You're not playing today. But for us, that role playing is magical. So I would never sacrifice it at all.
All right, rule number 6, and I feel like this is a really big one. Don't ask questions, just do it.
This is coming off because it's upsetting me.
just like people
the question or the headband.
I know. I wasn't looking up, so I was like, oh, here we go.
I'm gonna let y'all talk about this because y'all know how I feel.
Well, we know how you feel. The audience doesn't.
Okay, so as a newbie, I can pick this one. I feel like it came up after our first or second episode, and it was more like of a reminder of, hey, you can just do something. Don't ask the GM, like, can I move 5 feet this way? Can I do this? You were really good about, don't ask me if you can do something, just do it, and I'll tell you if you can or not, or I'll tell you if it's feasible or not. And that's helpful in terms of, I think it's maybe less interruptive to the game or to the flow of the story, is just having your character do something instead of breaking character and asking as a player.
Yeah. I mean, that's exactly how I feel about it too. It breaks when you say, can I pick up that stick? It's like, well, yeah, it's not. It becomes like a dad joke moment of, I don't know, can you? Like, it really does.
Now, I will say there are many games that I play in that the players, it's not a house rule for them, that don't ask questions, and they do live that. But it becomes almost to the point of metagaming where they will ask a lot of questions with like the skills. And I'm so glad y'all haven't done that. And I think y'all haven't done that since like the very beginning when we first started playing in like our first old campaigns before Vick was even there. Of the, can I investigate the area? Can I perceive? Can I use my perception to see where things are? Can I sleight of hand? And it's like, that's so unnatural to say, can I do that? Just say you're going to try to do something, and it's my job as a DM, if I hear you do something and it seems like there's a good chance this might not work, I will set the DC and ask you to do something with your attributes. But it really, really can frustrate me when sometimes I'll hear players who will, they'll try to like barter with the GM of, you walk into this crime scene, whatever, and I need you to roll an investigation check because you said you're looking around for some kind of clue. I need you to roll an investigation check. And then they'll barter with, well, could I use insight? No, don't barter with me. I'm telling you what, it's because they're looking at their highest traits and they're like, oh, but I really want to use something that's more successful. Well, if you don't have proficiency in investigation and you're not really talented at it, unless your character is that naive where they think they are the brilliant Sherlock Holmes, would they really be doing that that activity. And I think that's really hard because some people want to win the game versus be a part of the story. And y'all have done really good about that. But that asking questions is so frustrating. Just say you're going to do it.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you no.
Yeah. All right. Rule number 7. And I feel like the next 3 rules are more like table etiquette. So they're a little bit different. But rule number 7 is keep table talk to a minimum, which I think was a little bit more relevant when we had a much bigger party. At one point we had a party of 11?
Oh gosh.
Yeah, because we all didn't even fit on my huge dining room table.
Right.
I bought a new dining room table for the party.
That's commitment to the game. Okay, as reference, because I know the moment you said 11, there's people lighting up like, you're stupid, 11 people. So the reason why we had 11 is because when we started the game, there was 4. And it kept trickling from 4 to 3 to 4 to 2. And then we lost 2 players who they couldn't commit to it. And we were like, we want to keep the story going, but difficulty started getting ridiculous. Mm-hmm. So we're like, we got to find more players. So we added on 3 more players to get a new group of 5. And then those 2 players came back. And then scheduling went off. So we lost them. And then we met a family who wanted to play together. So it was mom, dad, 2 kids who jumped in, and I was running a separate story for them, getting them practice. And then at the very end, on the last encounters of this whole climax, we're closing everything out, everybody wanted to play. So I was like, all right, we're going to close out with 11 people.
I just got goosebumps.
It was the longest encounters of my life.
Mm-hmm.
And they were so scary, but not because of the threat of what you are fighting against. It was because there were so many people and everybody wanted to whisper and talk to each other and make a plan. And I was like, I cannot focus with all this.
Mm-hmm.
Just everybody stop.
Yeah.
And that's actually when we had the rule come to play of limit your talking.
Mm-hmm. And I feel like it really did play a huge part in how we all talk to each other, because I feel like when we were all together, we did have like little pockets of people who felt comfortable playing with each other, and those people weren't talking to other groups. They were only talking to the people that they felt comfortable with. So they were whispering during turns and then doing things instead of talking to everybody as a part or as a player, as a part of the story. So whenever we implemented that rule, I felt like there was a lot more role play going on and a lot more kind of crossover of the groups and building relationships in that. So that really helped with that.
And y'all kind of do a really good job of it on our broadcast, because there are times that I do see y'all like lean over and have a whisper moment, and that's fine. Even if it is a small moment of meta where you're like making a plan or asking a question about the game itself, it's understandable, but y'all do it respectfully where it's over and back in. But I agree with what you said. It's extremely important, instead of having those conversations in character where no one can hear, have them out loud so people get context for the story. But there also has to be a trust of, if I'm not present in that conversation, I have to remember my character doesn't know it. And I think that's the boundary of why people don't want to say it out loud. They want to whisper because they're afraid someone's going to impose themselves on it, which comes to that sharing space in the story. You don't have to be in every scene.
Exactly.
Well, it also sort of goes back to like being prepared for your turn, because it's one of those things where, you know, if there are 11 people and everybody's taking 45 seconds to a minute for their turn, that's efficient. But then you run into the one person that takes 9.5 minutes for their turn. That that's when you give people who the conversations start and whatnot. Just out of that lull in time.
When it takes 30 minutes in real life time to get 6 seconds in game time, that's
too much. Rule number 8. Sorry, I have to keep looking at the list to make sure I'm like going in the right order so I don't say the wrong number.
I can't wait to see the graphics for this layer 2 you're going to use.
Rule number 8. And for this one, I didn't put like an actual statement. I just put the word alcohol. So.
It's delicious.
We are not condoning or reprimanding the use of alcohol. Make sure you're legal. However, remember that alcohol enables lots of other tendencies in your life that you usually suppress. And lots of alcohol at a gaming can up a lot of personality in your role playing that sometimes is not beneficial.
Yeah, I think it's a lot harder to control or to stay in character when you're drinking alcohol. And I also think I think it can be helpful, especially if you're nervous or if you feel like it's just a social gathering. If it's a very casual game, I think a little bit is fine. But if you keep on drinking, you definitely do get a higher level of intensity, and you may say things you don't want to say. So
my next character is gonna be Friar Tuck now, so I can stay in character.
Oh my gosh.
No, but I think we played a game where I don't know if it was one where we just tried, like for filming sake, or if it was a different time where we started out, nope, we're not going to drink. And we took a break, and I think we felt like maybe so relieved as to how it went that we all had a little bit in between, like just a little bit. But we realized after the fact, like, oh, we didn't play as well after. Like, we were had our senses about us. But like we realized, like, oh, we didn't move as quickly, or like there were just more lulls and things like that.
Yeah.
To each his own.
And I think that was partly nerves of the very beginning. Like I said, coming together with a new group, it is nerves, and it does help you relax. I can't lie with that. It does allow you to lose that inhibition to play a little bit. However, I'm glad that we're not using it now as a coax. We actually started limiting to what we said. We're like 1 drink per half of the game. So when we take our break, you don't drink through the break, but you could have 1 drink at the table, and that's it. And I remember, Hovda, I love you so much, but I remember you coming and saying, okay, I have a bottle of wine for the first pass. And I thought you were joking, and you had 2 bottles of wine. You didn't drink them all, but it was that idea of like, no, I'm going to be fine. But we can personally attest, before Vick got involved in this a year ago Easter quest, we were like, you know what? We're going to spend Easter together, and we're going to play. And what was it, like a 10-hour game?
It was, because we started at 9 a.m. and then we were done at 7. Yeah, because we went to dinner.
It was not fun at all, but it wasn't because of anything. So I hid craft beers around the house and did a beer hunt for them. So we had craft beer aplenty,
which was the cutest and sweetest thing ever. I loved it.
Never again. But it was so fun. But it was a small game. That's when we went down to 2 people. So it was just Kat and Hovda playing, and I was still GMing. And there wasn't really combat or story that we were dealing with, which is why it was fine for us to have the session. But I remember y'all were shopping. And I have never in my life hated y'all shopping so much. But it's because we were getting belligerent with each other because we wanted to play our characters, and there was no real constraint of this isn't really how the character would act. So in that part of the story, y'all like ruined relationships with so many shop owners, and I was like, I can't take that back. So later on, it affected a lot of the story where I was like, no, they absolutely hate y'all because of the things that were being said. But me as a GM who was inebriated myself, it was like, oh my gosh, I could not hold back when y'all were coming so like abrasively against people. I just wanted to come abrasively against you guys as well. And I remember when we left, I was like, never again.
Yeah. So in conclusion of that rule, we are not condoning the consumption of alcohol in any way. Next rule. Rule number 9, cursing. Cussing, saying bad words.
Art.
How dare you?
Yeah. Now, this one really comes down to it's an us rule, and it's not. I mean, I have played many characters where F-bombs drop aplenty. But my general way of it's the same way I think about acting and being on stage. If I'm improvising a scene and I'm just throwing out obscenity just for the sake of shock value, it's not memorable and it doesn't come off as a fun experience. It's just it's lame humor, and there's a better way to do it.
Yeah.
However, if I'm using it to intensify a situation, yeah, it's okay. For me in my game, when we started, I even said we had a ton of cursing. And then the moment we started thinking about, we're going to go live, I was like, no, we got to rein this back. This is, it's not helpful. It's not funny. It's got to be meaningful. So even every now and then an NPC will start cursing or say something or call someone a name, but that's it. I absolutely had to put a hard no on. We're not going to sit at the table and just fling curse words at each other.
Well, and I think one of the big turning points with that for us as a group was when we added a family who had 2 kids, because we really did, like, we were very lax with our language and all of that. When we started adding in people who were underage, our friends' kids, we really reined it back. We really started monitoring what we were saying and
PG-13.
I think it really helped us as role play characters because we learned how to say things in different ways. So I think that's a really good rule to limit the amount of cursing at the table. Not so much just because it can be offensive to people, because yes, that's important too, but because there are better ways to say that.
Well, when you really think about it, the last 2 rules we talked about, cursing and alcohol, those basically come down to their crutches for getting you past the awkwardness of role playing.
Exactly.
So it's a lot easier for you to just drink and let things fly, and it's also a lot easier for you just to use curse words to make people not want to approach you and give no reason for real connection. However, getting rid of them and forcing y'all to connect, like you said, to find better ways to communicate you're upset, it has made y'all better role players.
Agreed.
Does that mean
we are at 10, which I think wraps up all of these rules. It is that the DM or GM's call is always final. What GM says goes. Round 1.
Round 1, final. Now, I will say this one is very, very, very hard to swallow. And even as a player, there are times I have to turn off my GM brain because I will know a rule and I'll be like, no, it's in the player's handbook. It says this is definitely how it's supposed to run. And I have to catch myself and say, nope, you're not going to look it up. You're not going to open up a tab on your computer. You're just going to take what was said and you're going to think another way around it. Now, that doesn't happen all the time, though. There are many times where people will double down because they are highly offended that they're not allowed to do something that they clearly believe is right. And a lot of times the players are right. But they will fight that DM, and there's nothing that will kill the mood of a game faster than whenever you are spending the time that's supposed to be for the shared story on fighting a DM's call. When you could just take it and move on, and then afterwards have the discussion about the session and say, here's what I'd like to consider.
When I think it mirrors like the mentality that the ref is always right. Whatever the ref calls or whatever the umpire calls, that's what goes. It doesn't matter if they were wrong. If they called it, they called it, and that's the end of it.
There's no instant replay in D&D.
Well, now we do because we have the video.
I mean, yeah, we do now, but we're not going to go.
Weeks. No, I mean, because we've even had moments in our playing as a group where for each of you, y'all have done things and I've called it, and there's been, are you sure? But it's that fine line of, can I say something to the GM and say, but it says this, or there's a spell that is defined this way. It's okay to have those moments of, I would like to oppose this call. Because like you said, even in sports, you can oppose a call, but if I take a look at it as the GM and I look and I read through and I say, this is how it's going to be interpreted, here's how we're going to play it, you have to understand that I'm playing it as this is the fairest way that I can look at it, where we're both going to get something out of it, but there's probably other circumstances that I have to make this call on. Sadly, it comes down to spells more than anything. And since Hovda is our only spellcaster, right now that's a big one, is every time a spell is called, I have to really look at it, because if you're casting level 1 cantrips and level 1 and level 2 spells, the reason we have leveled spells is they're not all the same powerful power level. So if you are trying to deal 72 damage on 13 creatures with one spell that's a level 2, there's something wrong with the interpretation. Even if it is stated, there's many spells that they'll come back on, which the codes will come back on and say, this is not how we meant it to be, and they do adaptations and reiterations of what they are. It is also stated that in the player's handbook, it really comes down to the DM's interpretation. So that's always the hardest part, because I feel like a bully sometimes, and I feel like, man, I've really pissed off my players. But I know if I allow certain things to happen, then when we get to another point where they can use that same thing again, of course they're going to want to do it the same way they did. They just had a really badass move that's really overpowered. Why wouldn't you use it? Mm-hmm. But it takes away the believability of the actual story.
Well, yeah, I think especially now we're doing a better job. Like, it goes back to being prepared, where it's like, when you do level up, when you do get other feats and stuff, it's like, if you have the ability to discuss it with your DM, like, that's the time to do it.
Which is why I know for us, I actually have y'all, I highly, highly support D&D Beyond, because I love the platform and being able to share all of the materials with the DM. I love that I can see your characters and know your, not really your stats, because I don't really care about what your stat levels are. I don't need to keep up with every skill check you can do. But I like to be able to see what are your spells, what are your attributes and traits that you can do, so that when you do level up, I immediately go in and I look, because I want to know what you're going to do or what you're capable of doing. Mm-hmm. And I'm not going to tell you to do it or say that, hey, you should probably consider making this move. For instance, Vick is one of our newest players. Yeah. Well, actually, do you want to talk about that, Vick?
Well, no, I mean, I want to piggyback off what you say and let you say it too, but it's helpful as a new player of not always knowing or remembering what I have available to me or what things I can do as an action or a bonus action. And you never say, hey, you can do this. Hey, you can do this. You give very subtle reminders of, don't forget you have a bonus action. Don't forget,
Well, yeah, because if I'm telling you the moves, then I'm playing the game. And it's really, y'all are here to make me happy and live my story. Mm-hmm. But if I'm trying to remind y'all, because it's a lot to keep up with. If I notice no one's taking their reaction, because you get your reaction every turn, and you have opportunities for extra attacks, or you have spells that you're allowed to cast as a reaction, or special feats, I don't want y'all to go forever not realizing it. And sometimes I don't know. You might be playing your character a certain way where you don't want us to see that. You want to save it for a special moment. And those are great moments. When you first raged in episode 1 and nobody knew what we were, and it was really clear, I was like, I don't want to tell the audience what your classes are. It was really quick to see who Kimura was from the very beginning. we knew that Dakar was a spellcaster. We just didn't know what kind for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Like 3 episodes, and then finally we realized what it was. A long time. But for you, it was like, she's really strong. Is she a fighter? I think she's a fighter. Like, it was like trying to figure it out. And then you kept getting beat to death and would not die. But it finally came down to the very, very end. And you're like, I would like to go into my rage. And it was just like, oh my gosh, this is so cinematically climactic, where this is that moment where the whole thing turns around. Now you got your ass kicked.
Yeah. Multiple times.
It's those moments of like, this is epic. And I can't tell if y'all are doing that or if y'all just don't know your shit. So dropping hints is all I can do.
A little bit of column A, a little bit of column B.
Yeah, no, in that case, very much a little bit of both.
I definitely felt like a cleric that first episode.
I mean, you pretty much were.
We have a healer in the party. That's all that matters.
Yeah.
Thank goodness.
All right. Well, these are our 10 rules as a group, and these have really worked for us to build a really strong bond and really nice environment for us to play together and kind of know the expectations of everybody else. Leave us a comment down below of what you think is like one of the most important rules for your group, because why not add 10 more? So
yeah, we really want to have a D100 where we just roll for a rule of the day.
Yeah.
So
thank you so much for listening and watching today. Make sure to subscribe below, click the red button to subscribe, and then click the bell to get notified of any new episodes. We're going to be trying to put out Night School Out of Character episodes every Wednesday. So be sure to follow us on YouTube and all of our other social medias at Night School RPG.
Woo.
Bye.